Hi, you guys. Welcome to the very first edition of the Earth Fest, which is brought to you by Nippon Paint. Okay, so I have to tell you all this. My guest today is someone I think fits in perfectly with the subject. He's one of the country's best landscape architects, and you really don't need me to explain to you why the fit is so perfect. But here he is, Kunal Maniar. Thank you so much for taking the time out and, just to chat with me about all things Earth.
Thank you, Ronita, for having me over, and thank you guys. Finally, we do make up to
Yes,
coming together and having a tete-a-tete. So I look forward to this
yes.
conversation.
My God, long overdue. It's been long overdue,
Uh,
but glad you're here.
so, yeah.
Okay. Um, Now, since this is the Earth Fest, and we're also commemorating World Environment Day, which happened earlier this month, um, I just feel like I need to ask you what sustainability means to you.
Well, I think everyone defines sustainability in their own way, and I think it's a varied term. So there's no particular way of defining sustainability, but I think we at KMA follow a small capsulated word called seeds, which actually abbreviates and explains sustainability. It's about S for growing and having symbiotic spaces, respecting Mother Earth whilst nurturing its ecology to create a derivative which is self-sufficient. So it's about those spaces, I think.
Wow. Okay. Like I'm even in the, okay. Obviously, I'm smiling from ear to ear now, but I'm smiling in my head as well because
Uh,
it's so cool because it's such a good fit that when we were discussing points for the conversation today, um, I knew I wanted to make you talk plants because my God, I mean that's what you do. That's an extension, right? Like the most obvious extension. But I also wanted to make you talk about exactly what you just summed up in seed uh,
yeah.
for us. Okay, explain.
So I'll tell you, when we talk about seeds, and which is the first letter word S, it means symbiotic spaces. So anything in nature that you do according to us, which is symbiotic, that if you take something from nature, you give it back, you always create an equilibrium. So the first word is, of course, S. The second word is E, which is Earth. And if you respect Mother Earth, then I think you're doing the right thing. And keeping the other letter, which is E, that is the ecology in mind. So if you tend to grow things like which are indigenous species, if you take control over the climatic conditions, I think ecology will definitely be on the side. And then the last thing is D, which is a derivative. So I always believe that if you have already concluded upon a derivative, then all the things that precede it always fall into place correctly. So if you have got a derivative right, then definitely you've got sustainability on your side. So it's seeds.
Wow. Okay. Also, when you're working on a landscape, when you first see the land, what do you do? What's your first step?
I think everything comes with its own opportunities and constraints. And I'm a firm believer in my design that if a site has opportunities, you must enhance its opportunities. And if it has constraints, then you let the constraints remain as it is. Do not overbuild onto the constraints to make them opportunities. I can give you a small example that, if you have a terrain land in which the contours are undulating, do not make that mistake of filling up that space with a lot of earth and make it flat, because what you're doing is going against nature. You're
Nature.
depleting soil from somewhere to put it somewhere else just to aesthetically please yourself. So that, in my opinion, would definitely be a big no-no. I would much rather live with the contours of the space rather than build something out of vanity and not making it last later. So that would be a primary thing to look at when I look at my sites. And then, of course, we do give a lot of emphasis also on having and growing indigenous plants rather than having exotic plants growing on a sites, yes, you would be fond of a certain orchid plant or something, and you can grow it in a certain pot or something like that, but do not flourish your garden with a lot of orchids and other exotic plants because they're difficult to sustain. So at the end of the day, I think if you stick to something which is just growing locally, you would be just doing fine. These are the two main things I would keep in mind.
Wow. Okay. Also, now another question pertaining to exactly what I'm asking you all of this because I've genuinely been curious.
All
And
right,
now that I'm getting you for the first time, I'm going to pick your brains. Okay, so bear with me.
sure.
Um, so when you've been doing this for a while, um, what is different today from like the things is has a lot of it changed? Has have there been too many changes that you noticed?
I think most clients of mine, I know they're going to kill me, but those all those filthy rich clients who love to grow expansive lawns and have larger than life gardens, everyone's realized, and with this pandemic, everyone's realized that just do with things that are required and cut the RAF out and just keep something that is necessary. So everyone who wanted 5 acres of growing just pure lawn to make it look vast and beautiful have now come down to curtail the size just enough that can be sustainable and can be managed because they realize that at the end of the day, what will remain at the end of the day will be something which is in your capacity to maintain and not something which is not. So people have become realistic, I would say. That's one thing that everyone's looking at.
And that's a it's a big step, no? I mean, you're moving away from vanity at the end of the day. It's a huge change.
Yeah, but it's a state of mind. You have to be in that state of mind of
Yeah,
accepting it. So of course, I mean, it goes both ways. As you heard last year, once the pandemic in China got over, there was this one lady who went shopping in Hermes and bought some $500,000 worth of clothes and shoes and accessories just out of sheer vengeance of vanity that she hadn't been able to shop. So it's human nature. I think we all of us you know, tend to do things for our own happiness rather than looking at the overall result.
the
So it's a
bigger
big
picture.
step, but it has to come into you first to implement it.
So, do you have to do a lot of hand holding then? Is it required?
Well, we do at one point. It's like getting killed by either end of the swords. So if you propagate to the client that you have a smaller garden than a larger one, it's killing my business. But at the same time, you're doing good to the society. So you do handhold the client to some extent, telling them that although you have the resources, try to be wise and frugal rather than being too vain, because over a period of time that doesn't last. So yeah, we do handhold at a given point sometimes.
Okay, nice. Okay, completely silly question, but do you talk to the plants? Do you have any of those funny anecdotal stories? What's your equation with the greenery?
I really haven't spoken to plants up till now. I mean, that's one thing I really haven't done. I don't know why, but I don't think I can land up doing that. But I think I'm very prudent enough in what I plant. I would never plant an extensively water-loving plant next to a plant which doesn't require too much water, because that means you're giving grief to the other plant, right? To giving grief to both the plants. But yeah, you're wise enough to grow and plant things in such a way that they are cohesive and they would like to thrive with each other. But I think that's the magic, and I don't really land up talking to plants though.
Okay, sorry. This is all old wives' tales. No, you have these. I remember aunties telling my mama and my sister while we were growing up that plants love music and you should talk to your plants and helps them grow better and all of that. So just wanted to know if you do.
Well, there is research. There are people who have done that, and it's proven also that they have life, so they will react to any sensory, feel, touch, smell, hear. They will, but I have personally not done that. But yeah, I'm sure it works for people where it really is ought to work.
Okay. Um, when you're designing and planning, a garden or a landscape, do you incorporate a lot of sustainable, um, you know, methods, practices? basically that will help in maintaining the garden?
Well, I'll
Is
be
there?
very candid with you. Sustainability by itself is is a very expensive proposition.
Yes.
It's not a cheap expenditure. So not everyone, even if you chose to have it, can afford it. But we do try sustaining things in our own way. So I'll give you a simple example. Um, if my client cannot afford sustainable ways of water harvesting, or maybe he cannot afford or does not want to spend over having growing plant species which are indigenous because they do not appeal to him. We at least go down to that level of sustainability where we hire local people to grow and adapt to these plants. So the contractors, the gardeners, whom we employ are local people. And that by itself also is an act of sustainability because every time that you do a garden, for example, in Alibag, and you hire a Mumbai contractor, you're displacing somebody from a local fraternity of
Yes.
his work, and you're giving employment to somebody who already has a lot of employment. So at least certain practices like that we should adhere to so that it gives you a sense of self-worth, and at the same time you feel good that you've given work to others. We also follow small practices like if you see you're fond of plants and you might go to a nursery and you all would probably get plants in plastic containers. So you can visualize a 2 acre property which is getting plants on the site would probably get, I think,
So
thousands
much
of pots
plastic.
and plastic containers.
Yeah.
So we make a conscious effort to return the nursery all these plastic pots back to them so that that many less plastic containers would be bought by him. So these
More.
are
Yeah.
small practices of sustainability I feel one should just follow as standard operation practices whilst doing landscaping. I feel.
No, and it's so correct. There was this conversation that I was having with Shabnam Gupta a few days ago,
Okay.
and she pretty much echoed your thoughts because the fact that it starts and you started out with this, that it has to be a conscious decision. It's a frame of mind. It's got to come from within. The changes that you make, and I think it's very important because post the pandemic, uh, we're all to whatever extent, but we're all questioning ourselves and our practices, and it makes so much sense. This whole plastic container point makes so much sense.
Correct.
Wow. Okay, now I want to ask you about your take on public spaces. Okay, um, when you're working on any examples that you can give us also will be fabulous. But public spaces, that is it, how different is planning a public space to, like a sprawling garden for a single client?
I would say public spaces and pedestrian walkways in any country have a direct correlation to the health of human beings in that country, I would say. And I think they're very, very important. I'll give you another simple example. Um, if you travel abroad, you see, if we take a vacation abroad, which I think hopefully should be
Soon.
soon, and we, all of us, whether it's you, me, we gorge on fabulous food and we eat and we are having fun, but we don't tend to put on weight is because the city is habitable to walking. It has parks, it has uh, pedestrian walks which are walkable, and that directly correlates to the health is because it becomes a walkable country or a city. Whilst if we do not pay attention to these kind of things, it mentally affects the well-being of a human being and also its health. So I think it's very, very important to have these spaces. And I think there should be people like us out there who help the government bodies make these or at least propose them because health is the future of not just our country, the entire world, right? So this is where it all belongs to at the end of the day.
Yes. Okay. So, any developers who, according to you, are incorporating, green elements in their constructions that you'd like to sort of highlight and point out that you've seen? It could be international, it could be something that you've done. Anything noteworthy that you've noticed?
I think a lot of examples. I think the Highline Park, New York, is a fantastic example of what you can do with what you had and turned it around into one of the most habitable places where it's a treat to walk across from one end to the other. Um, I mean, there are fabulous developers in India as well who are giving so much more importance to podium level gardens, be it any large condominium or a society. There's so much importance being given to community living where everyone, you could be from the highest rung to the lowest, but you all come down in the evening for a walk or
Wow.
for a swim, or you're making that space such that it becomes human interactive spaces. That by itself is a big win, which I don't think the builders between 1950s to the early 2000 actually believed or developed spaces like that. But I think post 2001, there has been a conscious effort and also uh, an increased awareness of builders wanting to create these kind of spaces. This actually becomes the USP of a selling point
Yeah,
for any builder.
for the project right now. So, in terms of city homes, okay, you made a very, very interesting point earlier when when we just started about no, I mean, everyone wants to move out of the city purely to be able to live better, which also reflects on larger outdoor spaces. Okay, now if we have to go back to urban homes, any practices that you think can be cultivated to bring the green element indoors, not in a big way, but a small way.
Right.
Anything you recommend?
I would think, okay, let me get back to you as an example. You
Huh.
love plants, but you don't have green fingers, right?
Yes.
So we all as human beings, I just connect uh, to growing plants, anything as something that you would connect to yourself. And keeping in mind that we're all human beings at the end of the day, either we're symbiotic in nature or we're parasitic, either of the two. Nobody's selfless.
Yeah.
So I would suggest grow plants as a starter. I would say grow plants which when you nurture should actually give you something in turn. It should give you something like a fruit maybe, or it should give you a flower. So that at least builds a connect between you and a plant. Today, if I'm just going to give you a green plant like a money plant, and if you keep watering it, and it's not going to technically give you money out of it, but it's just going to be green, you're not going to nurture it. So, right? So it's not going to be the baby step that you took first, is going to fructify. But the moment if I give you something like a small mini orange or a mandarin tree and you put it in your balcony, which is like northeast facing, and suddenly you see during the season a couple of those mini oranges coming in, and then if you take that plant in, it's like a trophy celebration for you that you nurtured it, and the rewards are something that you see. So my giveaway to you guys would be definitely that start with something which is like a fruiting or a flowering thing. Do give it that enough sunlight, grow it in some area of your balcony or windowsill which is northeast facing, which will give you some kind of a result, either in terms of a fruit or a flower. And then probably you'll be happier and you'll upgrade yourself to growing more plants, because I think having certain areas in your house with plants is always therapeutic, and it's nice to have them around.
Okay, nice. That's totally cute and very cool advice. I'm now next question, which basically stems from that, is
Great.
any agricultural projects that you've undertaken, growing of
I haven't taken up any agricultural projects as of now, but every few projects of mine that I do, we do tell our clients, especially the ones who have 2 acres and 5 acres and 10 acres of land, that do cultivate a certain area in your property. It could be just growing maize, like corn, or you could be just growing rice, or you could be just doing something like home veggies or something like that, but not on a big scale, whatever smaller scale. And you'll be surprised, in the last pandemic last year, that was during last monsoon, I had two of my clients growing rice in their own field, and they actually made it into a small paddy field. They were those blessed clients who had 5 acres and 4 acres of
yes,
land.
yes,
Till
yes.
now, it was redundant, but the whole process of sowing and then harvesting and then taking it to the mill and then eating polished or unpolished rice is it's trust me, it's what our fathers and fathers did. So
Fulfilling.
it's just getting back to nature in that way.
Oh, nice. So, any favorite projects that you want to talk about? Something that has stayed with you, something that you've just recently done, which has been very, very challenging.
There's a project that I did in Alibag for Naveen and Ruchira Agarwal. It was on the beachfront in Kihim, and it was like an acre and a half of land. And right on the beachfront, reclaimed land. So obviously everything was sand. There was not a morsel of soil on the site. Everything was just sand. And uh, Ranita, that's one site that we've done where we've not used even like not more than 15% of the total value as soil. The rest is all sand. And in sand, what we've done is just use decomposed leaves as nutrients. And along with that, certain amount of cow dung manure, mixed it and used only xerophytic plants. Now, xerophytic plants to a certain category do have cacti, and they did not want to put cacti. So we did an extensive research of what will grow on the beachfront, and we grew everything in sand and this manure using succulents. So the whole
Wow.
garden is all about growing targola trees, which was native to Alibag, and below that is only succulents, which we could manage and sustain. And to date, it's been 7 years, and we do not call for a single tanker of water. It just gets fed with rain water and whatever ground table water that's available, but we've never called for tankers of water to sustain that entire property. So it makes me feel very nice that at least one pilot project that I did in 6 years in my 20-year practice was something which is purely on sustainable, xerophytic, using indigenous plant species and not depleting Mother Earth. So it's coming back to my word seeds, which I have
Yeah,
completely lived up to in that project.
in that project. Wow. Um, okay, and any location wise in terms of east, west, north, south in the country that you're slightly partial to? Any spot that you like really working with?
I think I would love to work up north because I'm just I'm just blown away with growing seasonal flowers and change of seasons. Because we Mumbaiites fairly get like a plateaued season. Like you have that
Yes.
same, it either is 24 or 32 or 38. You never go down below 15 degrees. And I love the winters and I love the cold. And what it comes along with it is all the seasonal flowers, and you get to see a whole garden that actually goes through autumn and then winter
Changes.
and then spring. So you see changes, right? I mean, Mumbai is good and Bombay is good. I'm not complaining. It's tropical, but it's a plateau. What you see now is what you see later is what you see like after 4 months. But but like I'm doing a site in New Delhi, which is like an Italian Tuscan villa. It's finally gotten over after 2 years of working. And I'm telling you, every time we visit site, the hue of the entire garden is so different because of a
Wow.
seasonal change. So it's just nice to see that and appreciate that, I guess.
Wow. Okay. Last couple of things that I want to ask you.
So tell me, what do you think you like about growing plants? What is it that you enjoy the most?
So I like the whole idea of there being an equation and a relationship with the plant. Okay, I'm telling you that every single plant that I've brought home or that has been gifted to me, I've ended up killing. And for some reason, when I give it to somebody else to take care of, it starts growing again. So there's obviously something that I'm doing wrong with it. Um,
Okay,
but that just the thought of there being something that I'm giving the plant and the plant's giving back to me, I'm loving that whole idea. I'm looking forward to
okay,
getting fruit bearing. And it's just so simple, and you've put it out there so simply that yeah, I'm in love with the idea of developing an equation with the plants that I bring home, and I will now
great,
bring home plants.
super, great.
Thanks to you. I remember my question. Okay. What do you advise for uh, the absolute urban population for their homes?
I would suggest for anyone who is incline towards greenery. I mean, you do not need to fill up your balcony with 10,000 plants or something like that, but just try to have few potted plants. Ideally, be sensible about where you would plant them. Like try to grow them towards the balcony or a windowsill, or try to grow it towards the northeast sunlight or maybe the southwest sunlight, because you either grow it towards the setting sun or the rising
The
sun.
rising sun.
So chances of it probably dying out on you due to lack of sunlight is not there. They're like humans. Don't overlove, don't underlove. So that goes to you also, Ronita. Don't
Yes.
overlove your
No, no,
plants or
no.
underlove them.
Mental notes I've made.
Okay. And yeah, it's okay if it's a failure. Sometimes I see so many people, like I see that slightly in you as well, that you've already developed a block that you kill plants. But it's
Yes.
okay. It's perfectly okay that if you've killed one, two, or a plenty, because that's the practice you form to get to know what you have to do in your life to get them going. So
A lot of it is guilt, and it comes from, everyone around you, where they look at the plant and say, "Oh, bicharu, you killed it." You feel more
yeah,
bad that, "Oh no, I really killed it." But yeah,
that's true.
but yeah. Okay, I've learned some incredible things from you. Before I let you go, one last thing. I'd like you to finish the line. Uh, the future is.
Uh, Well, I'll rephrase it. I'll tell you, I've said it before also, but I thoroughly believe in that. Today, if you were to ask me what is beautiful, I would just say anything in life that's sustainable in today's day and age is beautiful. So I would say adapt to something which is real and do not expect anything other than that reality to last with you.
Wow, wise words. No, it's really beautiful. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for taking the time out, for chatting with me, for being so patient and listening to all my questions and answering them all so patiently. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you so much for having me over, Anita, and thank you to your entire team who was patient. Thank you, Tina, for setting up this meeting.
Yes,